This is chapter 20, Drifting Toward Disunion. Welcome back. First slide here, again, you see Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852, and a nice quote there from Abraham Lincoln when he met her. I think it was 1862. So this is the lady who started the Civil War. And he's not exaggerating. It sold 300,000 copies in the first year, 2 million within a decade by 1862. And there's a advertisement for the book. It looks like to me that is probably not a positive depiction of Uncle Tom's Cabin on the levee. So you have Bleeding Kansas. And what was Bleeding Kansas? Basically, it was a failure of popular sovereignty from the Kansas and Nebraska Act. The Kansas-Nebraska Act was a failure. It basically started the Civil War and a mini Civil War in Kansas, eastern Kansas. These border ruffians, these pro-slavery Missourians, are going to cross over and head west and cross over into Kansas and start attacking these free state forces and to impose, in a sense, slavery in the territories, in the territory of Kansas. Several acts of violence between pro-slavery settlers, anti-slavery settlers. These are the first violent outbreaks between North and South. You could say that the first battles of the Civil War started in 1856, where over 200 people were killed. There's forcing slavery down the throat of the free soiler. It's the Lee-Compton Constitution. That basically said, the Lee-Compton Constitution said, okay, we're going to vote on a constitution, but you can't basically vote against slavery. There's no vote on that. It's just going to happen, and what exists there for slavery is just going to stay, and there's no vote or change on that. That's basically what Lee-Compton was. Also, Bleeding Kansas is going to lead to the formation of the Republican Party in 1854. Also, more violence here. The crime against Kansas. You have Senator Charles Sumner go to the floor of the United States Senate. Sumner was really arrogant, Harvard educated, didn't have much tact per se. He was pretty straightforward. Came across where if he didn't agree with you, you didn't agree with him, you didn't like him. He went really heavily against the senators from the South in the Senate, particularly one of the senators from South Carolina. Can't remember his name, but his distant cousin and congressman from South Carolina, Democrat Congressman Preston Brooks, is going to get so enraged by Sumner's speech on the floor of this crime against Kansas. He's going to go in and he's going to beat him in the head and shoulders and everywhere with a cane. Almost kills him. Only thing that saved Sumner, as far as I've read, is that he went and hid under the desk and he went to go strike him, and the cane struck the desk and broke the cane, so he wasn't able to finish him off. Sumner is going to be really messed up. It's going to take him over 3 years to recover from this. He's going to have to go overseas and cost a lot of money, and it was pretty rough. This is not like a little brush up here. This was a brutal beating. Going back a little bit, just set up the 1856 election. In 1852, the Whigs were basically decimated as a party. The last Whig presidential candidate, they rolled out General Winfield Scott from the mothballs and put him out there against a Democrat from New Hampshire, Franklin Pierce. Pierce was nothing spectacular, put it that way. And then you had this Free Soil Party coming up about states and the territories being free, the Free Soil Party. This is going to be the death of the Whigs. You're going to see here that Winfield Scott is going to win Kentucky, Tennessee, Massachusetts, and Vermont. And that's about it. He doesn't even win Rhode Island. So he gets blown out in the Electoral College by Pierce, 254 to 42. It shows that the only national party at the time are the Democrats. The Whigs are gone. That's it. So you have the Republican Party. What makes up the Republican Party? Forgive me for the noises here. It was formed to stop the expansion of slavery. Had abolitionists, people from the Know-Nothing Party that were against immigration, the National Republicans from way back, which became the Whigs, so you had Whigs. Democrats opposed the expansion of slavery. The Free Soil Party also was against the expansion of slavery. So you had that. And just to back up here, the one thing that all of these groups agreed on is they were against the expansion of slavery in the territories. They didn't all agree on all different kinds of issues. They weren't all abolitionists per se. Okay? But they all agreed that the expansion of slavery should not happen in the territories. And that's what brings that party together in 1854. Why? Because they saw bleeding Kansas. They saw how brutal it was and how violent it was. So that they knew that this whole expansion of the territories is just going to cause more violence. So these growing tensions, what causes them? First, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Then we're going to see after this the Dred Scott decision. We already talked about the Lecompton Constitution and John Brown's raid. Now the tensions and the disagreements between North and South are becoming violent, and they're becoming very, very sharp. The Dred Scott decision wasn't violent, but it puts the two sides way on the other side from each other. Dred Scott is going to force this division even more politically. So, why is it Dred Scott decision so bad? Well, Dred Scott was a slave from Missouri who traveled with his owner to Illinois and Minnesota, which were both free states. His master died, and Scott wanted to move back to Missouri, but Missouri still recognized him as a slave, so he sued his master's widow for his freedom since he had lived in a free state for a period of time. The court case went all the way to the Supreme Court. It became a national issue. The questions are, can a slave sue for his freedom? Is a slave property? Is slavery legal? Well, the Supreme Court is going to hand down this Dred Scott decision. Now, first, we'll look at the parts of the decision. Then you see this flow chart on the left that's going to show the effect of the Dred Scott decision. So first, the decision itself. The Supreme Court ruled slaves cannot sue the United States for their freedom because they are property. If you're a slave, you're property. You have no standing to sue whatsoever in the United States. That's the first thing. Okay? And the main reason is because they are not citizens and have no legal right under the Constitution. They're defined, according to the Dred Scott decision, as property. And because of that, because they designated slaves as property, not citizens with legal rights, it in effect legalized slavery by saying that first, Congress could not stop a slave owner from moving his slaves to a new territory. Why? Because in the Fifth Amendment it says that an individual cannot be denied life, liberty, or property. Well, they defined a slave as property under the Constitution. Therefore, anyone moving anywhere in the United States cannot be denied their property, which would be slaves. And so, therefore, the Missouri Compromise and all other compromises, the Compromise of 1850, well, that never passed. The Wilmot Proviso never passed. Kansas-Nebraska Act, except for, of course, one part of the Compromise in 1850 is going to stay, and that is the Fugitive Slave Law. But all these other compromises where slavery is allowed or not allowed, okay, unconstitutional. Slavery is legal everywhere according to this decision. So what is the effect of this decision itself? First, the North is going to refuse to enforce the Fugitive Slave Law. And the whole logic is, well, if the court's going to say all these compromises and all this stuff's unconstitutional, there's no way they're going to enforce this fugitive slave law in their states or in these territories that choose to be or want to be free. Then these free states are going to pass personal liberty laws, which will give protections to slaves that escape to the north or in these territories, where they're going to give them the right under state law to be able to defend themselves. The Republicans claim the decision, the Dred Scott decision, is not binding, and Southerners call on the North to accept the decision if the South is to remain in the Union. Okay? So it's going to divide the country more. Republicans say this decision is not binding. The state governments don't have to go through with this. And you know what? How is the Supreme Court going to enforce it anyways? Well, the Southerners are going to say, okay, if you're going to think of it that way, if you keep on doing that and you don't accept this decision, we're going to succeed. And here, Chief Justice Taney, in the case of Dred Scott, referred to the status of slaves when the Constitution was adopted. You can pause that and read that there. Now is John Brown. More of these noises here. He was involved in the Bleeding Kansas. He murdered 5 pro-slavery men in Kansas at Pottawatomie Creek Massacre, that it's known as. He wanted to lead a slave revolt throughout the South by raising an army of freed slaves and destroying the South. This guy was hardcore. He did not believe in any political solution. He did not believe that he believed the only way that slavery was going to end was by shedding blood. He's going to say that, those are supposedly his last words before they execute him. So his raid, he attacks an ammunition depot in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, in October of 1859 to capture weapons to begin his slave revolt. But the problem is, no slaves really come to be part of the revolt. Okay, and here's on the left, there's a story on a newspaper about the insurrection. And then here's a painting of John Brown and his sons and others being captured by the United States Marine Corps under the leadership of Robert E. Lee. And he's going to be put on trial for treason. He's going to be found guilty and sentenced to death. His last words to this effect were, "I believe that the issue of slavery will never be solved unless through the shedding of blood," like I said before. And Northerners thought of John Brown as a martyr to the abolitionist cause. And if you look at this painting on the left, this didn't happen. It was a myth that he's supposedly bent down to kiss a young black baby when he was on his way to the gallows. There weren't any people watching when he was on his way to the gallows. So it's a great painting. It shows a lot of symbolism of what John Brown thought of what he was doing. But that baby kiss never happened. Now, Southerners were terrified that if John Brown almost got away with this, there must be others like him in the North who are willing to die to end slavery. So, therefore, we got to leave this United States and start our own country. We're not going to be able to survive this. This is it. And then that question that we read in over the summer, lies my teacher told me, was John Brown a martyr or a madman? And again, that madman image, it looks like that was just an appeasement to the South and the Southern explanation of John Brown. But there's a lot of stuff there you can read about John Brown to show that he wasn't a madman in a sense. He was willing to fight and die for the freedom of slaves. You can look at it that way too. And we're going to see here some different primary source writings about Brown. This is from Harriet Tubman. Paid him a very high tribute for his self-sacrifice. You can pause and read this here now. And then here's Abraham Lincoln. Again, he dismissed Brown as deluded or crazy a little bit. Pause and read this now. So, the Lincoln and Douglas debates. We're going to go through this a little bit quickly because the Lincoln and Douglas debates is going to set up the election of 1860. This is for the Senate in Illinois in 1858. They were followed by the country because both candidates were interested in running for the presidency in 1860. Lincoln got 100 and some odd votes for vice president in 1856 when the Republicans nominated John C. Fremont. Stephen Douglas, it's known for years he was trying to run for president. He tried to get the nomination in 1856, but they went with James Buchanan. So, also the other reason the country is paying attention, what became the number one issue after Dred Scott, the Dred Scott decision? Slavery. Slavery was the issue in the country because of Dred Scott. And Lincoln stated, and there's a theme that went on through the 7 debates, a house divided against itself cannot stand, straight from Scripture. Either we become one or the other, slave or free. This in-between thing is not going to last. He was against the expansion of slavery. That was what united the Republicans. Not full, abolition of slavery. Okay? Expansion, stopping the expansion of slavery into territories. Douglas believed that slavery should be decided by the people with the concept of popular sovereignty, but the Republican Party was formed saying, hey, Kansas, Nebraska, that whole popular sovereignty thing didn't work. So what Lincoln does in 1858, he sets up, he might lose the election in 1858 for the Senate. And the reason he lost is for a couple of reasons. If you look at the popular vote, the Democrats, regions had less people but brought more representatives to the House and Senate, the state House and Senate. But also the Republicans didn't field the full slate on top of it. And because of that, it was that much harder for Lincoln to win. That means the Republicans had to have a higher percentage of victory in the areas they were running. So it didn't happen, but this is how he set Douglas up. He got Douglas to admit that popular sovereignty could work against the expansion of slavery. And because of that, hook, line, and sinker, Southerners will not support Douglas for the presidency in 1860. Because he said that, they couldn't trust him. Like they can trust Buchanan. Like they can trust Franklin Pierce, who basically would push the Southern position on slavery. Now, Lincoln expressed his views on the relation of black and white races in 1858 in his first debate. And it's going to show that over time, Lincoln's going to become more convinced on equality in a sense for blacks, but definitely not in 1858. Pause and read this. So in the election of 1860, if you look at the map, Lincoln needed 152 electoral votes. He got 180, all from the north. Most of the southern states wouldn't even put him on a ballot. Okay? Second place is going to be John C. Breckinridge. Why? Because of the split between the northern Democrats and the southern Democrats. Well, Breckinridge is going to sweep the South. Only thing Douglas is going to win. I mean, even John Bell, the Constitutional Union Party in those border states, well, kind of border states, Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, he's going to win that. Douglas is only going to win Missouri and win New Jersey. But look at the popular vote he gets. He gets almost 1.4 million to Lincoln's 1.865 million. He gets a lot of popular votes, but it's just not enough. So once Lincoln is elected as president, South Carolina will succeed from the United States along with several southern states. They will form the Confederate States of America. If you look at that map and pause, you'll see the areas that were for secession in the green, against secession in the pink. Divided on the issue will be purple. No returns, nobody really knows. The gold is going to be border states that did not succeed. And then the numbers there, the order of succession, starting with South Carolina and finally the end with North Carolina. And here is the succession, the green before Fort Sumter, the pink after Fort Sumter. The border states loyal to the Union but had slavery: Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, Delaware. Your free states, Northeast, Midwest, Kansas, California, Oregon, the rest of the territories. And again, the order of succession's there. And that is it for Chapter 20. Until next time, thanks.